L'chaim v'livracha. Chaim. So the world tells us, or the values within the human condition are that if I act properly towards you and I speak properly towards you, I'm a good person. And there's definitely some merit towards that. However, Yiddishkeit, Judaism, Torah tells us that our thoughts are also part of our behavior. Now, on a simple level, you'd say, oh, okay, you get that. Why? Because if you're going to think in a negative way, right, so then you'll speak ultimately negatively, or you'll act in a negative, in a inappropriate way. So, it behooves a person to think in a proper way in order that they will be a mensch, will be a good person in their communication and their engagement and their actions with another individual or towards God. Right? That would be the classic way to appreciate and to understand that behavior really is my communication, my speech, and my actions, and not my thoughts. But comes Torah and tells us, no, your thoughts are also a behavior. They may not be a behavior to someone else because, you can't read my thoughts. I can't read your thoughts, right? The righteous, different story, but I can't, you can't. So we're not behaving with each other in any negative way, even though I might have a negative thought and don't express it. But Torah tells us, no. Because the first relationship we have is with God. And God knows our thoughts, and therefore what you think is a part of your behavior towards God. And it doesn't mean what you think about God necessarily, right? It doesn't just mean that. It means any form of thought that is not something that God is okay with. That is also between you and God, and we're responsible for that. Not because it'll lead to something in and of itself is wrong, it is sinful, it's evil. If we think the things or willfully think the things that we're not supposed to, right? And according to the Baal Shem Tov, it's actually even more important because in your thoughts is a real indicator of where you're at. But you say, you can say to someone, I love you, but, you're not really there internally. You don't mean it. You're just saying it. You can do an action towards someone that might be loving, but you really don't like them. But you did it anyways, for whatever reason, right? But what you think is a real indicator of where you're at. Because you think the things that you have strong feelings about. And therefore, it's a true indicator of what world I live in. Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We begin chapter 27. Chapter 26, we spoke about how we could be down on ourselves because of external things like health, external because we can't control it, right? Wealth, our livelihood, we can't control it. We can do things towards it, but we can't control it. And relationships, we also can't control other people and how they'll relate to us. Again, we can do things, but we can't control it, right? And that could bring you to a place of sadness or your own spiritual failings. Also, what we spoke about yesterday, like the day before. Now we go into another form of an anxiety that a person can have, and sadness. And that's about your thoughts. Your thoughts, we need to totally own, because that's part of our behavior. And therefore, negative thoughts, sinful thoughts that we willfully think, right? The righteous have complete control over their thoughts. We don't. So we will think things that are inappropriate, right? Now, if we meditate upon those things or willfully continue the thought about them, then we are sinful, right? Then we're responsible. Then that was in chapter 26. That's our spiritual failings. You have negative thoughts that come into your mind, whether it's negative thoughts about a loved one that you shouldn't entertain, or you see someone who's not dressed modestly. A man sees a woman that's not dressed modestly. So it will conjure up a thought, right? That you can't control. You can't control the negative thought about a loved one. But you can control, are you going to continue the thought? Are you going to willfully continue that thought? That's what we're talking about. No, I'm sorry, that's what we're not talking about the willful continuation, because if we willfully continue, that's our spiritual failings, and that we spoke about in chapter 26. Here we're talking about, I'm always having these thoughts that are negative coming up to me, right? And it's creating anxiety. I push them away. That's what we're talking about, right? I push them away. I don't entertain them, but they're constant, right? Constant. Whenever you try to pray and concentrate in your prayers, that's where you're going to experience it most. That you're going to have these crazy thoughts come into your head because you're exerting yourself trying to concentrate, right? But here we're not talking about that. That will be the following chapter. We'll speak about what happens in your prayers when you have, these thoughts. Here we're talking about, when you're at work, when you're eating lunch, right? You're doing your own thing, mundane activity, that, those thoughts come to you and they create anxiety. They create a downer, right? It's a downer. Like, who wants to eat lunch or do work and have these negative thoughts come into their head, and to deal with that? The Alter Rebbe says something amazing here. Says, so you're down? Well, really, you should be happy. Happy? Happy that negative thoughts come into my head? Yeah, you should be happy. You know why? Because, hey, you averted the thought. You pushed away the thought. And in doing so, you actually fulfill a commandment. It's a commandment that we say in the Shema twice a day, in the third paragraph of the Shema. That you should not follow after your heart and after your eyes, by which you go astray. The Alter Rebbe says, who's that talking to? God's commanding, right? Don't follow your heart's desire that your eyes lead you to go astray, right? If it wasn't in your heart, then when you look at something, you wouldn't be able to go astray. But it's in your heart. And therefore, when you looked at it, you went astray, right? Meaning, so don't do it, he's saying. What does that mean? It's a commandment. It's a positive commandment not to allow that negative thought to go astray. In other words, here I'm eating lunch, a negative thought comes to me, right? Hey, I'm fulfilling a commandment by pushing it away. So be happy that you can fulfill a commandment now. Right? Be happy that you can fulfill a commandment. Because the verse is not speaking about a righteous person, because a righteous person doesn't have negative thoughts that enter their head. It's speaking about a Beinoni, or worse than a Beinoni, someone who's sinful, right? Halavai should be that we should be a Beinoni, right? But speaking about, it could be someone who's, and Torah is telling us, push it away. Wow. Now, and here's something. Here's something amazing. Our sages say that one who sits passively and refrains from doing a sin is rewarded as if they've actively performed a mitzvah. So be happy. You did a mitzvah. And it's as if you actively did something. It's as if, but you're happy when you give charity. You're happy when you pray to God. You're happy when you study Torah, right? Those are positive things. They're not passive. They're active things. Here it's kind of like passive in the sense that you have to push it away, but you're not actively doing something positive except pushing away the thought. But no, be happy in that. So why wouldn't you be happy? It's because you're actually conceited. Why wouldn't you be happy that you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah now? Right? And again, we're talking about not in a time of prayer or a time of study Torah. Not now. We're talking about when you're eating lunch, you're at work, you're in school, studying geography. I don't know if they do that anymore, but Right? So you're conceited to think that these thoughts shouldn't fall into your head. Again, we're not talking about someone who fails in them. We're talking about someone who pushes away the thought. But you're still distressed by it. You still have it. It brings you anxiety. It's a downer for you. Shouldn't be. Be happy. You can fulfill God's mitzvah. And don't be conceited to think you're righteous. For only the righteous, if this thought wouldn't come in. You're not. Right? And so be it that you should be a Beni, not a Rasha for even a moment. Right? And here you have an opportunity. What are you doing? You're subduing the evil nature within you. How are you subduing the evil nature within you? By pushing away that negative thought. That's coming from your evil nature. You're pushing it away with 2 hands. That's amazing. Right? Now, and this takes it to a whole new level. Listen to this. Every time you repudiate, push away a negative thought, right? Whether it's a thought again about a loved one, or it's a thought, an immodest thought, and you push it away, you're suppressing the sitter acher of the world, not just in you, but in the world, down here. What's sitter acher? The other side, negative side, klipa, right? Which soars like an eagle. And what are you doing it? You're bringing it down. You're grounding it, so to speak. And listen what the Zohar says. With this we conclude. The Zohar says that God's divine satisfaction occurs, his ultimate, I don't know, ultimate, but extols the divine satisfaction that occurs when the sitter acher is subdued down here below. And continues and says, amazing thing. God's glory rises above all, more than any other praise, greater than all else. Whoa. So when that evil thought enters your mind and you avert your mind from it, you are taking the sitter acher and bringing it down, right? You're like taking that eagle and grounding it. You're taking, and through that, you're exalting God in the most sublime way as a result. Why would that be? Pushing away a negative thought as opposed to something like, giving $1 million to Chabad, right? Now, I would appreciate the $1 million a lot more, but it seems that God is appreciating that subjugation of that thought in an exalted manner that, more whatever, but why? How come? Any thoughts on that? Anybody? Because when you give $1 million to charity, you feel good. And maybe you're doing it partially for God, maybe you're doing it more for you. But you're right. Why you feel good? It's because, hey, the community knows I gave so much money to tzedakah. And that's a good feeling. Right? That's a good feeling. Who's feeling that? The animal soul, right? Feels worthy now. Feels great. What happens when you push away a negative thought? Who knows?
Only yourself.
Only God. Only God. Where are you really serving God for sure? When you push away a negative thought, right? You don't have a negative thought and you go to your friend. By the way, Jack, I just want to tell you, I really had negative thoughts about you, but don't worry, I pushed it away.
Mm-hmm.
You don't tell your friend that, right? So who knows that you're such a great guy? Only God. When I give $1 million or I give $180, who knows that I'm a great guy? The recipient and others, right? All over town. Oh, he gave so much money, da da da, or whatever amount, right? So is that really serving God? Self-serving. Okay, you did a mitzvah. But where are you really praising God, exalting God? Is when it's truly for God. When you have a negative thought and you push it away, it in the end it's really only because you really believe that God sees it, knows it, and you're truly serving Him by averting your mind from that negative thought. That's true service of God that exalts God. That's amazing. So we might think it is a small thing. It's huge. It's a real sign that you're a servant of God. Because, that when I don't come to shul any morning, everybody's like, oh, where's the rabbi? Yeah, maybe, God forbid, he's sick or something happened. Well, what's going on? So like, it's almost like I can not but come. What's everybody going to think? So my coming, is that a true service of God? Maybe, maybe not, right? But the fact that I subdue the negative thought in my mind, push it, and avert my mind from it, focus on something positive, something good, that's truly divine service. It truly exalts God as a result. Fascinating, powerful. Any questions, any comments? Yeah, is that clear?
Yeah. Well, I do have a question.
Go ahead, please.
So how do we know that the righteous don't have negative thoughts? Have they ever said that? Like, how do we know that they don't? When I say have negative thoughts, obviously I don't mean they entertain it, but like, how do we know that they don't deal with this negative thought that comes and they have to push it away?
Because then they wouldn't be righteous, they would be a Beinoni. How do we know but the person? Not going to know from the person, because outwardly a Beinoni and a Tzaddik are going to look the same.
Yeah, but how do we know that?
How am I to
Yeah,
know
like,
if you're a Tzaddik or a Beinoni? Like, why is that an issue about how am I supposed to know about someone else? How do I know in myself? In myself, I'm going to know. I have negative thoughts that come into my head. So I'm going to know that I'm not a tzaddik, right? How's someone else going to know if the person's righteous? That's already a different, that's for what reason do I need to know that they're righteous?
It's not about
I'm not clear what the question is.
Where do we get the idea that?
How do we know that even exists such a thing?
Yeah.
How do you know that Shabbos exists? Because Torah tells us, right?
Yes.
The Torah tells us. So how do you know How do you know that Tefillin exists? Because the Torah tells us. So the Torah tells us.
Where have we seen that?
Where do we see that? Tanya.
Since the beginning that we've read that like the righteous don't even have negative thoughts. I don't remember seeing that.
In Chumash?
Yeah, in Chumash or in the Tanya, for example. Or
Tanya is what we learned in chapter 10 when we defined what a tzaddik is, right? In that chapter 10 we defined the tzaddik, right? Chapter 12 we defined a Beinoni.
But in Chumash we don't get that.
In the words?
Right.
How much did we learn today in Chumash and Rashi that were not in the words, but that were learned out from the words, right?
A lot.
Right? A lot. So, it's the oral tradition that where you're going to get the understanding of something. The written word, you're not going to get an understanding of anything. You will not even get an understanding how to observe Shabbos. As a matter of fact, you will be very heretical if you just took the written word and observed Shabbos because the verse says, don't go out of your home. The verse says about keeping Shabbos.
So even with the Torah and commentary, of
So
course.
it's only with the oral Torah that explains, right? So Tanya is part of that oral Torah. The Medrash is part of the oral Torah. right? The Talmud is part of the oral Torah. So that's where we're going to understand the concept, right? Now, you know, the only time the word tzaddik is used is by Yosef in Chumash, the word. But it's not about the word, it's about the concept, right? It's about the concept. Because use the word, you know, I could tell you anything that it means. It says, Yosef ish tzaddik, that he was righteous. Well, I translated righteous. Maybe tzaddik means he was charitable. Because tzedakah comes from the word tzaddik, right? He wasn't righteous. He was just charitable. So how do you know what it means? So you know the famous story of Hillel. A convert came to him and says, "Teach me Aleph Beis, but on condition that you only teach me the written word and not the oral tradition." So he taught him Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet the first day. Second day he came back and he showed them the Aleph and he said Dalet, and he showed them the Beis and he said Gimel. He says, yesterday you showed me, you told me a different pronunciation for those letters. Well, why'd you change it today? He says, how do you know yesterday I was correct? I orally explained that to you. Right? It's not in the word, it's not in the letter itself any way to pronounce it. You look at an aleph, you don't know how to pronounce it. Just looking at an aleph, it looks Chinese, right? But how do you know? Oh, there's a tradition that teaches us that that shape of a letter, oh, we pronounce it this way. That's oral, not written. Written will never teach you anything. It can represent something, but it won't teach you anything without the oral tradition. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any questions, any comments? Yeah, it's hard to push negative thoughts away, but okay, let's see, any question? John, God should give you much more than a million, because you'll know the good to do with it. All right, Rambam coming up. Amazing, folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a very good day.
Amen.